What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And today, my lovely guest is Deborah Heiser. Hello, Deborah.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely. We're going to have fun. You're going to educate us on your amazing book, the Mentoring Project. We're going to talk about all the things that you've got going on, and we're just going to help a bunch of people today. How about that?
Love it.
I love it too. I'm just going to read your bio real quick and then we'll get going so people know who we're playing with. So, guys, we have Deborah Heiser. She's a Ph.D., is an applied development psychologist, a TEDx speaker, consultant, author, and founder of the Mentor Project, and an adjunct professor in the psychology department at SUNY Old Westbury. Deborah has additionally authored peer-reviewed articles and co-editor of Spiritual Assessment and Intervention with Older Adults, and a frequent expert guest on syndicated and local radio talk shows, international and local podcasts, and print and online media. Deborah has also been quoted in the New York Times, Seattle Times, Dallas Times, contributes to Thrive Global. Her research covered a wide range of topics related to aging, including depression, identification, dementia, and frailty, with grants awarded by NIA and NIH and Pfizer. Deborah's received an international award for her research on depression identification, as well as serving for 9 years on the board of the State Society of Aging of New York, and was president in 2008. Later in 2016, Deborah served as president of Queens Psychological Association in America. And that's amazing because I've been to Queens and they're all crazy. So that's amazing. So everybody, welcome to Deborah. Thank you so much, Deb.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we are the What If You Could podcast. So I just have to get that question out of the way and then we can just roll from there. So have you ever had a what if you could moment or what if you could thought, or do you have a what if you could for me?
Yeah, my current what if I could is what if we could connect everyone with someone who could help guide you in whatever it is that you want guidance or advice on.
Wow, that was easy. Um, we're probably in the most incredible era of that of any time in world history, right? Where we can do that. I
Yeah.
mean, let's face it, after this podcast, probably 1 billion people are going to go buy your book, The Mentor Project. And they're going to read that, and based on that, they're going to connect with you and share. And literally, 6 degrees of separation, you could have 1 billion people engage with what you're doing to share that thought you just had. It's as crazy as it sounds, it's an actual reality, right?
Oh, it's totally a doable thing. Since COVID, the silver lining from that was that, the book is the Mentorship Edge, but it came out of the Mentor Project, which is an organization that connects students with the top 1% experts in their fields. So, astronaut, astrophysicist, artist, whatever it may be. And last year, we were able to give $3 million of mentorship hours to students around the world for free. So, the reason we could do that is because we can reach students in Zoom and in platforms that didn't exist in a readily usable way before COVID. So the unbelievable opportunity that we have to connect with people, not just students, but anybody. If somebody said, "Hey, I want to learn how to podcast, I wish I could talk to Gary Scott," this kind of thing, we have the ability to connect people with who are experts in something that we're not. And it's just wonderful. I think we can do it.
So wait. I've read through a lot of your stuff, and I guess because I am not a smart man, I didn't connect that. So Is that what the mentor project is about? Is you get, are these like volunteer people that say, hey, I'm willing to go talk to anybody in my similar field if that helps them with what they're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was this didn't happen like we didn't set out to do this. As an applied developmental psychologist, I was really interested in how do we develop? What is it that we are looking forward to as we get older? And most of us think of age as some kind of physical decline trajectory, but emotionally, we are on an incline trajectory. And part of that is when we hit midlife, we have a built in desire to give back. It's because we've been taking everything in our whole, younger selves' lives. And we finally hit a stage, between 40 and 50. Really, by 50, that's the sweet spot that we want to give back. We're full. We got to open the Tupperware lid and let it out. And that's really what happened was I started to talk to people and they were saying, hey, I I do all this stuff, but I feel irrelevant. I don't feel like I'm making anything meaningful of all of my expertise. And it's not just an expertise that comes from a degree. It's grandmas who are like, hey, I want the culture and values and traditions of the family to be passed down. So I was starting to hear this from people. And when we started the Mentor Project, it was because enough people had said, I want to give back, but I don't know who and how to do it. And I had always thought of mentorship the way that corporate America has sort of hijacked the term and made it think of it as a work thing, where you go find some nameless, faceless person out there who's your mentor. And really, it should be a mentor focused thing. I've got this expertise, who wants it? And that's why we started it.
See, okay. So I thought that here I was talking to this expert on aging and dementia and all these things like this, but did you start? I don't want to leave the mentor project because it's fascinating, but did this come about? I think I heard you say this came about because as you're working with people during the aging, what you were doing with that career, you discovered people like we all know, right? If a man will retire at 65 and die at 67, right? He was a successful CEO who was all this, and he's just bored and just like withers away, right? So we know if you stop doing stuff, you atrophy, right? Your brain, your mind, your body. So is that how this came about for you?
No, what really happened was I became a psychologist because my grandma got depressed. She was a woman that I used to always go and visit down in Florida when I was young. And one time I went down to visit her and she was the most vibrant person around. You didn't have to bring clothes. You could just wear hers because they were all stylish and cute. And so I went to visit her and one time she wasn't herself and she was grouchy and irritable and she wasn't cute looking. She was a little disheveled. And I said to somebody, what's wrong with her? Grandma's not the same. And the person said, don't worry, we'll fix her. And I was like, what? And they said,
What?
yeah, she's taking a medication for her COPD and it's not agreeing with her. She's depressed. I didn't know what that term was. I came back a few months later and she was better. She was back to herself. And so I said, that's it. I want to be a grandma fixer. So I went out and
Is that
decided to
like a horse whisperer, but for grandmas?
yes, yes, exactly. So I wanted to study aging and psychology. So I got a job in a psychiatric hospital on the aging unit. Then after I graduated from with my PhD, I started a research division at a very large nursing home. And I was studying everything nobody wants to have or get. But that's what I thought we had to look forward to. It wasn't until somebody at a dinner party said, well, wait a second, what do we have to look forward to as we aging specialist? And I was stumped and I kind of left there with my tail between my legs thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have an answer for this person or for myself. So I pivoted and said, I want to, while I was still working, I want to now focus on what is it that we have to look forward to. And I went back to the research and I said, I'm looking only at physical stuff. Our emotional trajectory never goes down. It starts at birth and goes all the way up to the end of life, and we should expect to be happier. But media was saying, only highlighting things like depression and Alzheimer's and all of these things that are outliers. We should not expect to get Alzheimer's disease. We should not expect to be depressed. We should not expect to be lonely. We should not expect all of these things. So when I went out to look at what is it that is the big thing that makes that happen, there's this midlife stage called generativity. And that's been studied for decades. Erik Erikson was the famous psychologist who posited this theory that in midlife, we have a desire to give back because we've gone through all the other stages and it's our meaning stage. We're saying, all right, I checked a bunch of boxes off. I did all these things I'm supposed to do that I looked forward to when I was younger. Now what? Is this it? And that's a kind of epiphany stage for people. And then people say, oh, this is my time to make the meaning in my life. And a lot of people want to engage in volunteering, mentoring, and philanthropy. This is when we see people taking out their checkbooks. This is when we see people volunteering in, faith-based organizations, community organizations, wherever, and mentoring. But mentoring wasn't getting the correct recognition. It sort of got taken over by corporate America, where it became a checkbox within the workplace that was kind of designed to get workers to do more stuff for their company. And so it's not something that generally works well there, but mentoring is something, it's how religion has been passed down for centuries. It's how we have our values, our culture. If you have a culture, it didn't come from you that, last Tuesday. It's been around for a long time. And so these are the things that really generally matter to us. Most people, they're okay with saying, yeah, I'll pass down some accounting to somebody. But it's really the things that live on in others that we're looking to make meaningful for us to say, I mattered. And so that's where I started to say, when I talk to people, they said, I want to give back. I want to, Bill Cheswick, who's one of the fathers of the firewall, said to me, I'm getting ready to retire from Bell Labs. And he's a guy who innovated so much stuff. His stuff is in museums. And he said, I'm going to go live on a farm and I won't have access to anybody to give back to mentor. And, we joke, he couldn't go to a park and say, hey, kid, you want a mentor? That's just completely inappropriate. So what do these people do? So there was this mismatch, all of these really amazing top leaders that people would pay to meet with, couldn't find mentees. And so we started with just getting Bill and a couple of other really cool, amazing people into schools. And we went from 10 then to 60 to 80 to 100 within a year of mentors saying, I want to give back. It was like they finally had a place where they could give back what they wanted to. Nobody was saying, you must give back this. You're at work, you have to give back this work skill. So if Bill is an innovator in, network security, internet security, but he often talks about rockets or other things that really make him excited at that moment because he has expertise in that. So it's a way to get people connected so that we're not burning down libraries of knowledge every time an expert exits a field or that they die, that we're keeping culture alive, we're keeping knowledge alive, we're keeping that ball rolling.
God, I love that so much. I mean, I just like you said. I mean, it's been going on for millennia, and then it just kind of died out. It's for some reason. I don't know if it's. I think it's more in our society than it is in other societies. I think in European societies, Asian societies, they value seniors and older people so much more than we do in America, right? It's like, well, Granny's 65, let's throw her in the home and, forget about it, feed her gruel and see what happens. But in a lot of European and Asian countries, at 80, people are still teaching Tai Chi, they're teaching how to cook, they're raising the great grandchildren. They stay in the home, they're welcome in the home. I would never take my mom in my house. Something's going down. Okay, that's all I'm saying. I don't want to get weird, but I love the so many things that you touched on. So in essence, you kind of merged your profession and your work with something that became a passion for you to, when you left that dinner to go, oh shit, wait a minute, maybe I'm missing a piece here. So but then how did you? how did you create this? I mean, you talked about the one dude from the Bell Labs. I mean, how did you then create this and grow it like you have?
So it wasn't like me saying, "Hey, I have this brainstorm idea." I was talking with people. And then when I talked to Bill, I said, "Hey, Bill, I think we might be able to get you into some schools." So we kind of moved around to see what that looked like. And we started to get him into schools. And then a group started to form. Like people started to come on. I called my dad and was like, "Dad, can you make a website for me?" And then a lawyer that I knew who was a fabulous lawyer
Wait,
was
wait,
like,
wait, wait, wait. You called your dad to set up a website. See, it's
"Yeah,
supposed to go the other way, where your mom
I know. I
calls
hate it.
you.
I hate it when people say, "Oh, you call the younger generation for help." I always called my dad. If I needed
That's awesome.
anything, I called my dad. And he would be like, "Okay." Every like harebrained scheme I had, he was like, I'm on board." So anyway, everybody that we needed that would form a company was interested and came on board for this. And so we all put in $350. I think it was like seven of us to form a bank account and then filled out the paperwork. And I got the bank account. I started to do all this stuff and got my work with my dad on the logo. I mean, it was really, there was a lot of mundane stuff, but we were all doing it on the side and just having a lot of fun. And the fun was seeing Bill and some of the others, the couple of people that we had going into schools. And really I'll tell you a funny story. There was Irene Yakbis, who was um, an engineer for NASA with the mission to Mercury. So we brought her to a school and I went in with her. And the students, it was middle schoolers, and they said, "Oh," they asked me, "Are you the flight attendant?" And I was like, "No, I'm not the flight attendant on the mission to Mercury. It's not a plane. It's not like you hustle peanuts." And so then they said to Irene, "Oh, are you the flight attendant?" And she's like, "No, no, no, no." And then they said, "Are you the pilot?" And like they didn't know what it was. They thought that it was like a flight to Florida. And so it was really funny to be able to see these students then learn about what the mission to Mercury was and what was involved in having it happen. And it's those kinds of things that I don't think that those students ever would have imagined, A, that a woman did it. They kept thinking we were the flight attendant. But B, that they could do it, that there was even a job out there that existed like that. And so getting to
How many of them knew where Mercury was?
nobody knew anything.
So, I mean, it's
And this
like,
was an upper middle class school.
right. So it's
This
like
was
bizarre
like
that they would even
a
think that
private
you could
school.
go to Mercury. Like you're
Yeah,
talking like
like,
Mercury,
"Oh, pack your
Arizona.
bag, get your bikini, we're going to Mercury," like it was really funny. And it showed me though how important mentorship is, because it doesn't have to be a one-on-one. It can be exposing somebody to something new, like that person who was a psychologist at the senior living place where my grandmother was, who said, "We're going to fix her." I became a psychologist after that. I was like, I want to do that. We don't know what we don't know.
Yeah.
So mentorship is part of passing that on so we know new things.
Yeah. I'm super, 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 super lucky because I get to talk to people like you every day. And you guys are like my mentor, right? And then I can take things to another episode, or I could take things to a conversation, or I can share things like, dude, you can't believe who this person that I interviewed. Deborah was brilliant. She opened me up to this thing that I'd never heard of, and I just think it's brilliant, right? So I mean, just these podcasts and stuff are mentoring.
They
Are
are. You are mentoring people. It's modern mentorship.
Well, yeah, because you're mentoring. I'm just I'm just sitting here. But I mean, the only reason I bring that up is because back to where we started is like I think now is such a golden era to do this because you can share with so many more people than we ever could. And I love the fact that, like you said, I can take a rocket scientist, but they can start talking about history because their job was rocket science and they're super brilliant, but their passion is history. So they don't necessarily need to mentor based on what they did in their career, but they want to mentor on what they love
Yeah.
and what they enjoy and what they're passionate about. So you said you've got 100 people now in the mentor project?
Yeah, we've had more than 100 people come through. So sometimes
Wow.
people take a little sabbatical, they go somewhere, they do something, and they take some time off. But yeah, we have a lot. We have a really diverse group of people who are mentoring students in all sorts of things, which is really exciting.
Ah, yeah, I just love this whole thing. So let's go back to you a little bit. So you talked about how where did you start in your career, in your profession? Where did you start? How did you get on this path?
So, it took a long time because once I decided I wanted to be a grandma fixer, I then had to switch my major, and it took me a long time to finish my undergrad, and I did. And then I went to work at a psychiatric hospital on a geriatric unit doing research for about, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, 5 years. And then I went on to graduate school. And from there, I ended up working in doing an externship in a nursing home while I was still getting my PhD. And the interesting thing was while I was there, I walked into the nursing home and I was like, gee, and it was a gigantic nursing home. It had like 705 beds. And I said, wow, everybody looks kind of sad. And I said to somebody, oh, people kind of look sad here. And they said, no, nobody's sad. We have this scale here that we fill out. And no, nobody's sad. I was like, oh, they're the experts. Okay. So then I kept coming back and saying, I don't know, they look sad. So I said, listen, as part of my externship, I'd like to do a little project where I test everyone to see if I give them a 15 item scale questionnaire to see if, they screen positive for depression, would that be okay? And they said, sure. And I
They
said,
had to hate that. Did they accept
no, they
that?
were happy. They were like, whatever, go do what you want. Like I was so behind the scenes, like a
Just
nothing.
don't interrupt them during Jello. That's
Yeah,
all.
like,
That's
well, they
all
were
I'm
like,
saying.
whatever. I went into every room and then I got some like friends to come in and help out. So we were all doing that. I got more than 700 depression scales done. And then I said, I'd like to compare these to what you collect for the government. There's a form called the MDS. And it was, the government form that assesses it's like huge, and the nurses hate filling it out. It takes forever. So, but it only had two things to check off on it. One was, is the person taking depression medication? The other one was like, have you seen Mary crying lately? Something like that. Two things. And so I said, I want to compare it to that because, you have a very low rate of depression. I'd like to see what it is. And they were like, okay. So I got an IRB, approval and then said, I'd like this to maybe be my dissertation. And so they were on board. I wasn't bothering anybody. I was just quietly going and doing all this stuff. And the residents, were happy enough to do all of this. Well, it turned out that there was a 44% identification of depression. It doesn't mean that they were depressed. It means that there was so I was like, oh, wow, that's a big thing. So the external psychologists that were there, they were like, woohoo, yeah, we have more patients to see. This is great. But what that meant was then like the nursing home was like, I think you have to continue this. Like, let's see what is here. So my dissertation committee said, we can't go by this 15 item screener. That's just a screener. So I said, okay. So I was so naive. I called the person who created the scale that is the gold standard that's used in psychiatric hospitals all over. And it's not a depression screener, it's one to give a diagnosis. It's one that they would say this person is depressed. So I used that and I did a sample of people there and compared it, matched perfectly with the screener that I was using. So then the government had to change how they assess depression in nursing homes
Wow.
because I published it and it went out there. And so it made a difference. But what I was thinking at that time, and I was so proud of myself for running around doing all this stuff, was like, I'm making a difference. But that person at the dinner said, you're putting a band-aid on problems that are our future. And that's what really got me to think. I was really head down focused on depression and Alzheimer's and frailty and all of those things. And I never looked up to see, if you really think about it, most people in the nursing home are not depressed. We just notice the ones that are. And so I wanted to start to see people differently and see what we can expect. So that was where that change came from. And that's how I got into just shifting what I looked at from one thing to another.
Wow, Deb, there is so much there. So first off, crazy that this facility was so receptive to what you wanted to do because that's
Yeah,
like
hats off.
so foreign to most of these facilities. That's amazing. So that was kind of a God minute there. That was kind of a blessing there that you were in that facility that was receptive to what you wanted to do. Um, you ever seen the show Landman?
No.
Billy Bob Thornton is in the show called Landman. He's an oil dude. It's actually very, very funny. Well, he gets back with his crazy ex-wife, and she decides that she actually accidentally ends up in this senior home. And she looks around, she's like, everyone's so depressed, it's so sad. So she takes it upon herself to become a volunteer. Well, it becomes a shit show after that. It's hysterical. And everyone in the facility it changes their entire life. It's really
Oh,
great.
it's
Very
funny.
funny. But is 700 people, is that what would be a normal group? Like if you were going to do this type of study or research, what would be a normal size group to do it with?
It depends. I mean, 700 was much more than was needed, but
That's what I thought.
I'm
Yeah.
like an overachiever. I was like, I'm going to get everybody here that I can get. And so, um,
But that
you,
had to help you because you're like, hey guys, I mean, this is a big amount of people in
yeah,
one facility, right? And the numbers were so great. How did you keep the psychiatrists away from just drugging all these people? How were you able to
I had
fight them
nothing
off?
to do with any of that. I was just a student who was in there asking people 15-item questionnaires.
Wow.
That's it. Like they didn't care, and the residents loved it. I was doing another externship where I was talking to residents. I was working with a psychologist. I was not a burden to anybody there. And it wasn't like people were like, "Oh, we can't let this be found." They weren't like that. They were like, "Oh, we now need to give you a job." So that landed my first job and I became director of research there. And then that started to do more research that really was, the person that brought me in was a Monsignor. I went to Fordham University and he was on the board of this nursing home and he brought me in for the externship. I don't think he ever thought it would be more than just the usual externship that I'd end up staying there and doing more work there.
Wow. Well, that is really awesome. I mean, and when you go in these places, a lot of times the challenge is not depression, it's just boredom. They're bored, they don't have a mission, they're in a place that sometimes isn't always the greatest. And so at some point you kind of regress down to where you are. And if that's where you are, maybe people aren't visiting, it can start to wear on you whether you're clinically depressed or just bored and sad. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
difference, right?
Well, what happens is there is something called an adjustment disorder. So if you can imagine any new change or transition that you can have an adjustment disorder. A person gets married, a person starts a new job, a person goes to college. There's something called an adjustment disorder, which a lot of people can have when they go to a nursing home, and it looks like depression, but it's not. It's just an adjustment. So we had to tease that out, and a lot of the people there suffered from adjustment disorders, not clinical depression. So there was a chunk of them that had that. So you could go to a nursing home or another facility and see people that look like that, but you have to wonder, is it they just got there and they're really like, what in the world? Um, or is it that, you know, I do have to say, a lot of the nursing homes that I've been in, they're not bad. They get a bad rep. Most people don't go to nursing homes, so they don't know what they're like. But the staff are often very caring and loving. And there are activities, and people make friends and they find boyfriends and girlfriends. And, like it's kind of a life that people don't imagine because people think that if you're older, you're boring and bored, you know, and
Yeah, but we know that STDs are raging inside senior communities, so something's
that
going
is the
on.
truth. That is the
Something's
truth.
going on in there. I was a caregiver for my wife when she went through cancer and passed from cancer, and being a caregiver is very tough.
It
And
is.
some older people can be a little cranky and a little crotchety, especially when they get stuffed in one of these places and they don't want to be, and their folk, their kids put them there or whatever. So you really have to be a special kind of person to work in one of these facilities. You really have to
Oh
be,
yeah. Yeah,
strong,
that's so true.
empathetic, and things like that because it's not an easy job.
It's not, I have to say that a lot of people who are drawn to work there are amazing individuals. And I wish that people could get paid more than they're paid because they really are difference makers in the world. So my hat is off to every caregiver out there in the world because it's something that people don't talk about or you don't know the daily struggle that it is. In nursing homes, you have a little bit more help. You have other people there. If you're doing it at home alone, that's tough. That's rough.
It's wicked. Yeah, it's a tough thing. I mean, um, so what was the time frame from when you did this initial study and then started going down this path? From that time frame until you met this this lady who called you out on these couple things and brought to your attention that, wait a minute, maybe she has a point here. Maybe there's a piece I'm missing. How long was that time frame?
It was all pretty explosively fast. So I had a book that came out right away. Started to have grants right away. I was really cooking. So when I went to this dinner, I was like, "Ooh, look at me. Here I go. I'm going to this thing. I'm so
Well, you
amazing."
were the big shit. I mean, you were
Yeah, I was
the new
really
kid in
feeling like
town.
that.
Yeah.
And then I came home feeling like the tiny little, whatever. But um, it happened very rapidly, where everything just landed. I was getting grants. Got this position that was really amazing. And I had a book coming, a book that was out all right away. And
What
so
what was the book about?
it's called Spiritual Interventions in Palliative Care. So it was the time, all of this was happening so long ago. This was when palliative care was brand new and people thought you were killing people if you were offering them palliative care. So this book, though, also was out there because, if you're on the unit or you're someplace and somebody was put on palliative care, anytime a person knows that or thinks that someone's going to be dying, they don't go in the room. They avoid them. It's just something that people do. It's too scary for them. They feel awkward. They don't know what to say. So
Yeah.
one of the things was, and I didn't think of this card, it was somebody else um, who was at the nursing home. They thought of a care cabinet. There's many other interventions, but this one I just thought was so clever. The intervention was to put things on the cart that would make it so that somebody would stay longer, like candy and chocolates that you'd have to unwrap. Like you have to take your time to get it and then unwrap it. You're there. Things like plugging in music and sound things and all kinds of things in this portable cart. But then people would start to stay longer. If there's a snack, people stay. Like people don't realize the power of a snack or a candy. And if you have to unwrap it, that means that you might just chat with that person. And so people started to stay longer and people would visit, and not just for the snack. Once they got there, people would check out the cabinet. What's in the cabinet? What's in here? And it ended up being something that was a really big deal because when person is nearing their end of life, the last thing they need is isolation. They need somebody to come in and talk to them, the more the better. And so it was interventions like that that would help a person and to highlight that palliative care does not mean you're killing somebody.
That is so freaking awesome. Just that little tiny thing. It's like one of our grandsons is autistic, like big time, like it's never spoken and just spins in circle and stuff. But they find little widgets for them so that they sit, like they come in, I can actually get them to sit on my lap or sit by me on the couch sometimes for a little bit when we give him these little widgets. Because now instead of just wanting to run around and spin around in circles, he's kind of got this little thing, right? So it's shifted his focus, shifted his mindset. So I just love that you can get little snackies in there to watch grandma while she's, on her way out. Makes that more comfortable, makes people stay, gives them a little something that takes that that thought out of their head, distracts them just for just enough time to lock them
Mhm.
down a little bit, and then it expands from there. What a great, I mean, it's such a small thing, but it has such a huge impact. That's awesome.
It's always the little things that make the big impact. It's the things
Yeah.
that are right under our nose. And it was really the people who were the staff that were there all the time that came up with it. Because they were like, oh my gosh, like imagine people who work in a nursing home or a hospital and they know that, oh, somebody might be dying, or we have a week with them. It's natural to want to protect yourself.
Yeah.
But if you can get that person in there, and not just family, but other people in there, the people who are coming in to do maybe the meds or something else, you get them in there a few minutes longer because they're rifling through to get the snacks, or they're pressing the buttons for the music. Somebody that's in the bed can say, hey, can you turn on the sound machine? There's an opportunity for a dialogue then, and that's what makes it natural. It isn't like must go in and, figure out how to talk to somebody when I feel awkward about it.
It makes me think of the exact opposite extreme side of life. I mean, with preemies, they used to take the preemies, shove them in this little tiny isolated box so they would be protected from any kind of
Yeah.
infection and crap like that, right? And these poor little things would struggle. And now they're like, we take the preemies and now we hold them and nurture them, or we give them interaction. We actually physically touch them. And the amount of growth and progress is so exponential. It's so amazing what the
Yeah.
touch has done for these preemies, right? To, to get them to live and grow and prosper. And then on the other extreme, it's the same thing on the way out, right? It's like the more touching, the more interaction, the more feelings that these people get, it helps soothe their transition out of here. So it's
You know,
kind of an
it,
interesting sort of on both sides of it.
it's really our whole life. We need emotion. That's left out of everything when people talk about things. When they talk about us developing and growing, you really only hear about the physical things. Are they walking? Are they talking? Are they doing this? Are they doing that? No, but when we say, hey, if somebody has a kid and they say, what do you want for them? People will say, I want them to be healthy and happy. They don't say, I want them to be a fast runner. And so these are the sorts of things that never goes away, but we can notice it at the bookends, right? But that's why this midlife stage was so important, because it's an emotional developmental milestone. This developmental milestone of giving back, it is not what is described by corporate America, which is looking at it more in a structured kind of like a physical way, like it's a transactional thing. We need emotion. We need to feel connected to people wherever we are and in every stage. And that's at work. Who likes to go to work and you're like, like a robot going and doing my job. You want to feel connected to those around you. You want to feel useful to those, who you can help, and you want to feel like you can be vulnerable around others, but also outside in our personal lives. We also want and need that as well. And I'm talking about it from the mentor's perspective, because that's never been talked about really. It's always talked about what can the mentee get. And it again puts it back to that kind of physical thing, like a transaction. I'm going to grab something from somebody. It's an information grab, as opposed to a meaningful connection with somebody that you are receiving something that is very valuable from them, which is their knowledge. And that's where I wanted to kind of highlight that we have these emotional needs throughout our lives, and it doesn't go away in midlife.
Yeah, it's the mentor mentoree relationship is so valuable because, like I was talking about earlier, like the family structure in so many other countries is different than many times. Back east, you have more of a family structure than you do on the West Coast for some reason. I don't know if it's because people are more spread out on the West Coast. I don't know if people immigrated to West Coast, but when you go back to New York, Philly, Pennsylvania, a lot of these, Uncle Sal's living in the basement, or your grandma's living around the corner. I mean, you get together for Sunday dinner. I mean, there's a lot more interaction. In California, it's like, I'm not going to drive 45 minutes to your grandma. Forget about it. I don't want to, I'm going to do it. So even just in America, there seems to be this lack. So, the grandkids don't get to be around the grandparents as much.
Mhm.
And the grandparents have so much to give. And I know how kids can be like, Grandma, listen, don't be talking to little Jimmy about this stuff, all right? It's like, but Grandma needs to be talking to little Jimmy about this stuff. I mean, there's so much knowledge there in our seniors, and we just don't seem to appreciate it that much.
I think that we have, this is just me making this up and saying this, it's my opinion. I didn't look at research to back it up, but I feel like, we don't have civic engagement like we used to. Like in the 80s when I went to school, it was kind of the tail end of civic engagement, where you were required as part of high school to go out and do something in the community. And then it switched to being like, build your brand, make yourself, it's all about you. Do not help somebody else. They will then come in and hijack your trajectory on up. So do what you can to get into the college, then do what you can to get the job and whatever. And it became, if I show my vulnerability, somebody's not going to see my power or what I'm good at. And if I help somebody else out, it's going to be to my detriment. So there's that sort of happened, and the civic engagement went away, unless somebody, nowadays some people do it, but it's to get, a mark on to be able to put it on a resume to go to college, but it's not really a requirement. Communities aren't operating in that way. And I feel like we're getting back to that sort of feel though with the internet, because now people can connect, and social media I don't feel is the big villain that people have said it is, because people have now been doing some of the things like informed in ways that they can use that and either get involved in something, whether it's voting, or whether it's a cause that they feel passionate about, whether it's saving dogs or cats, or if it's whatever it might be. That's where I think that we can harness this and make it the civic engagement that we once had, but at a more global level.
Yeah, and the thing I love about that, yeah, the internet could be wicked. I mean, the internet could just be this horrible cesspool. Social media could be so wicked if people just want to make it that way. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Um, but so many great people I've met from doing this and because of the internet and stuff like that. Just some of these my older, I don't even want to say old. They're in their 80s and they might as well be 17 years old. And one gal, I'll just shout her out to Velma Hagar. I think she's 84, 82. She has a huge following on TikTok, Instagram. She has a YouTube page. And I'm like, dude, did you ever think you were going to be a TikTok sensation in your 80s? And
Wow, I
she's
love
like,
it.
no, she did this one silly little thing and she got like 2 million views on it. And
Oh my
and
gosh.
she's just blown up. And the funny thing is, most of the stuff she does is religious. Like she posts something about Jesus or religion every day, which most people for a little while were just so against. Oh no, don't force religion on me. But the way she does it, it's so heartfelt and it's her.
Yeah.
But it's so like the internet can be so helpful, and I love so many of the seniors that I've met that are online. I mean, I've never been on Twitter. And I've got a couple older friends in their 80s who are like blowing up Twitter, and I'm just laughing. I'm like,
That's
dude, it's just so wonderful. There's so much different. So what is next for the Mentor Project? Where are you going to take the Mentor Project? What do you see? What do you visualize for this?
So what we're doing now is we're really looking to expand programs and opportunities so that, if people want to tap into the philanthropy side of whatever they're doing, they can sponsor, a mentor-mentee relationship. They can sponsor a program. We send an artist to Tanzania every year to teach students how to do cartooning. He's a well-known cartoonist. We do those sorts of things that are really huge, that are epic. And so my hope is that we'll be able to get funding to get more of those happening in the next year. So we've reached $3 million of mentoring. I want to make it 10 by, 20, so that 2025 we have that, and more programs where we're reaching students in new and different ways. We did research last year so that students in Mexico and the United States have been involved in 4 peer-reviewed journal articles based on the research that they did. And they're in high school. I didn't do that work until I was in graduate school. So if you're 15 and can do that, you're pretty amazing. So getting more people doing sort of world-changing things or life-changing things, that's what I want for the Mentor Project. Expand what we have and involve ourselves in the 3 forms of generativity, which are mentoring, volunteering, and philanthropy. So if we can continue having all of the people doing what they're doing and involve the philanthropic sort of leg of it, I think that we're going to be unstoppable in terms of making impact in the world.
Oh, I love it so much. And there's so much stinking money out there. I live in an area called Palm Desert, California. We're about 90 minutes from Los Angeles. Most people know Palm Springs, California, better than Palm Desert, California. But there's so much stinking money here. There's so many people come here to retire. So many people come here, to vacation and stuff like that during the wintertime because we're in the desert. Um, I mean, we're doing a thing involved with the girlfriend factor where we take these guys, people donate money. They take young gals who can't go to school or want to go to school. They put them through nursing school or college, whatever. It's a great thing, but there's so much stinking money out there. It's bizarre how much money is out there, and but there's also a million hands reaching out. So how do you fundraise for this? How do you reach out to the people who have dough and expose them to this?
That's my weakest thing. Everybody, has been volunteering. Every mentor volunteers. Obviously, you can't pay a mentor. If you're being paid, you're not a mentor. But we also have people volunteering to do some of the really big work that needs to be done. In terms of the people who donate, it's because they're passionate about it. They'll say, I want art in new places. If you're taking art to a town that's never seen Western art or cartooning, you just changed a community. Like, so it's people who have a passion, they want to see something. If people say, I want research to be something that doesn't become, an afterthought, that it's an active thing, that person can fund that. They can fund a passion of theirs and they can become involved in it. They can say, I want to join in. So that's really where we've been getting it, is people will say, I'm passionate about this. I want to give my money to this. It makes me feel good. And they become then a part of the Mentor Project family. And that's really how and where most of the donations come from.
I'm sure it's a lot easier to get the mentors than it is to get the money.
Oh, for sure. Because people want it. They say all the time, every day, that they want to mentor. And, we have an astronaut, we have a 6-time Nobel
Wow.
a laureate nominee. We have all of these people that people said, no one like that is going to ever apply to be a mentor. And we put them through the ringer. They have to get a background check and fill out all these forms and meet with a bunch of people. Like, it's not easy. And, because they're going to be working with kids. So we want to make sure that they
Well,
are
but I mean,
not.
they're not physically going to be with the kids, are they? Or do they physically meet with
When
people?
Justin goes to Africa, he is.
Wow.
Um, but sometimes they are, but we still don't want any, like, you don't want somebody doing something inappropriate on Zoom.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So is that how, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a good question. I mean, how do the mentors interact with the mentees? Is it a group, like one person, one guy will meet with
Anything.
30 kids, or will it be, does
So
it vary?
we will do in person. There are plenty of in person that happen.
Like
Justin.
at schools and
Yeah, we go to
organizations and stuff like
schools,
that? Yeah.
but if a person can meet one-on-one with somebody, they do. So we have plenty of college students that'll get together with their mentor. It might be that they, even if they have their parents take them and they're younger, they can meet with the mentor. But we don't say no to that at all. But most of the time, people are excited to meet with somebody who's far away that they could never meet. If you live in New
Wow.
York, you don't have access to Silicon Valley. you might want to meet somebody from there. If you don't live near an astronaut, you might want to meet somebody, and that's not going to be meeting in person. So,
The astronaut next door. No, there are
yeah,
not a lot of astronauts running around.
right.
So,
So there are fewer than 700 in the world. So, but the
wow.
main thing is we do group panels that can be live. We've done those live, and then we have a whole live audience there, and people can then interact in person. We do Zooms. We have group meetings where they meet in groups for like the innovation lab or the research group, or we've done a bunch of hackathons that are international. Um, but it can be one-on-one, group, Zoom, in person, group, one-on-one, whatever. We do whatever we can to get people connected.
I love it. I love it. So, what was the name of your first book? Because I'm kind of interested in that.
Spiritual interventions. So if you look up
Spiritual.
my name and you look up that, then you'll find it. It's
Okay.
palliative care.
And that was about, again, the spiritual. What was that about?
That was about interventions that people can do at the end of life for palliative care.
Mm,
And
right.
that was published, I don't know, in like 2003 or 2004, and
Wow.
then it got republished. Somebody acquired it, um another publishing company, and it was republished in 2013. So it's been around a long time, but
Yeah. What an awesome thing, though, because it's such an important, we die if we're lucky, we die well. We don't always get that
yes,
opportunity, right?
yeah,
We sometimes it just croak, and a lot of times we die lonely, which is also a sad thing.
yeah.
Well, this is wonderful. I love this. So, guys, we have been talking with Deborah Heiser, PhD, author of The Mentor Project. Um,
The author of the Mentorship Edge, sorry.
I'm sorry, what is it? So I don't screw it up
The
because I
book is
always do.
the Mentorship Edge.
Aha, I'm looking right at it. Okay, so founder and CEO of the Mentor Project
Yeah,
and author of The Mentorship Edge.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
make sure all the links are correct because I'll just screw that up. But I lied earlier. I did lie. I'm a liar. I'll cop to it. I said I just had one question, and I did. I had the what if you could question, and I gave you that one because I didn't want to spring both of them on you. But I always end with one last question, and this one I don't tell you ahead of time because I kind of want it to just be more organic. And so, as we kind of sign off and people I'm sure loved every second of what you had to say. But if you wanted to leave our guests with something that was important to you, a saying or a thought or something that, was important to Deborah that she'd like to leave with us, what would that last thought be?
Look to your left and look to your right. You're looking at your next mentor or mentee.
That was easy. That's awesome. So look to your left or look to your right and
You're looking at your next mentor or mentee.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I want to volunteer. I've been a real estate broker for 35 years. You get some kids who want to talk about real estate. You have them reach out to me. I'll do a Zoom with them anytime. I'll even go through your background check and all but just don't do a psychological exam. I won't pass. But I'll do the I'll do the background check. I'll do all that stuff. So this is really wonderful. I mean, somehow we're living longer, even though we're poisoning ourselves with food, water, and air. But somehow we're living longer. Um, we're wasting so much knowledge. I mean, throughout history, you look back, and the people who lived long enough back in the day were always the smartest. And you look back and all the stories of Colonel Sanders or Ray Kroc from McDonald's or all these people who started later in life and built stuff out. I mean, even Warren Buffett, I think he said, I didn't really make any money until I was like 55 years old.
Yeah.
I was building and building and investing. And I mean, to this day, the guy won't spend a penny. He dresses like me. But so there's so much there. There's so much knowledge. There's so much giving. There's so much caring. Um, and it's a shame to waste it. It's a shame to waste it. So I
Yeah.
love this. So I'm going to repeat this again because I screwed up the first time. I've got Deborah Heiser. Deborah, you're a PhD. You're the founder and CEO of the Mentor Project and author of two books. The most recent book is the Mentorship Edge, right? So where
Yeah.
can we find you? What sites? Where can we go? How can we find Deborah, reach out to get involved with this?
You can go to mentorproject.org to find the mentor project. I'm there. You can find me on my own personal website, which is deborahheiser.com. And you can find the book at any place that you get books, and it's available on audio. So if you are somebody who likes to listen in your car, it is available that way too.
Awesome, awesome. And then are you on all the stuff, Facebook and all the other
Yeah, you can
platforms?
find me on LinkedIn. If you Google me, I'm all over the place.
Cool, biz, cool, biz. Well, this has been wonderful. I love this. I've always been that guy who liked old people. A lot of people, it's so bizarre. A lot of people just don't vibe with old people. They feel uncomfortable with them, or I'm not sure, but even when I was a kid, I always vibed with old people. I like them a lot, and I like to ask them questions, even since I was a little kid. So, Deborah, this is wonderful. I just hope this blows up. I
Me
hope we
too.
see this everywhere. And we're going on with 10 million. We want 100 million. We want a couple 100 million. There's so much freaking money out there. And here in our desert alone, I mean, we have so many billionaires that live here that are retired and bored. They golf all day and then they drink and they eat and they're just bored. I mean, we need to reach these people and let them know this is available. So, thank
Absolutely, we do.
thank you so much for coming on. I
Thanks for
really
having me. It's
appreciate it.
been a delight talking with you.
Yay, let's split this out. Let's blow this everywhere. All right, guys. Again, Deborah Heiser, we've got her with us from the Mentor Project and the Mentorship Edge. And thank you so much, my friend. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. Take care. Have a
All
great
right,
day.
see you guys.
Bye.
Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.